The Mortal Kombat franchise has painted itself into the ultimate narrative corner not once, not twice, but repeatedly across 3 decades. And every single time, the only way out was to literally blow up reality and start over. Today, I'm breaking down every major event that forced the timeline to reset, from cosmic prophecies that made apocalypse inevitable to gods who couldn't stop breaking their own rules. Starting with the prophecy that killed everything. The Armageddon prophecy. The original Mortal Kombat timeline contained a prophecy so absolute that it functionally guaranteed the destruction of all existence. Ancient seers foretold that when all warriors across the realms converged at a single battleground, their combined power would literally tear reality apart. Not metaphorically, literally shred the fabric of existence into nothing. And here's where it gets darkly ironic. Every attempt to prevent this prophecy made it more likely to happen. The more warriors trained to defend the realms, the more powerful they became, the more irresistible they became to the prophecy's pull. It was a narrative trap with no escape route. To contain this apocalyptic force, 2 Edenian gods named Argus and Delia created Blaze, a fire elemental designed as a containment vessel for ultimate power. The theory was that when warriors defeated Blaze, the victor would absorb godlike power and stop the remaining combatants before total Armageddon manifested. But here's the kicker. The prophecy wasn't wrong. When warriors finally reached that pyramid and defeated Blaze in Mortal Kombat, Armageddon, reality didn't stabilize. It dissolved. Every realm crumbled. Every warrior perished. The entire multiverse faced cessation. This wasn't a bad ending you could retry. This was the end of all possibility for storytelling. The franchise had written itself into an apocalypse so total that continuation was literally impossible. The prophecy wasn't a warning. It was a death sentence. And the only way out required someone to do something that shouldn't have been possible. Which brings us to a desperate thunder god standing at the end of all things. Raiden's last resort. In the final moments before total annihilation, Raiden sent a 4-word message backward through time. He must win. That's it. 4 words to prevent the end of all existence. Not a detailed plan, not a comprehensive strategy, just 4 cryptic words transmitted across vast temporal distance while reality itself was tearing apart. The message was fragmented because transmitting complex information through time was impossible. The signal degraded. The power required to pierce through centuries was immense, and Raiden was literally dying as he sent it. 4 words were all he could manage before Blaze's power consumed everything. Past Raiden received fragments of future images in dreams and premonitions. He saw flashes of Armageddon. He saw warriors dying. He saw the pyramid. But decoding the message was another matter entirely. He must win. Who must win? Liu Kang? Kung Lao? Someone else? And win what exactly? The tournament? A specific battle? The war itself? The message created a paradox where Raiden had to act differently to prevent Armageddon. Yet his interventions created unintended consequences that spiraled beyond his control. Every decision he made based on that knowledge changed the timeline. Some warriors who died in the original timeline survived. Others who survived died. Relationships formed differently. Alliances shifted. And through it all, Raiden had no way of knowing whether his actions were moving the timeline closer to salvation or creating an entirely different apocalypse. The Thunder God's ultimate gamble was betting everything on Liu Kang without being able to explain why. He couldn't tell his past self the full truth because he didn't know the full truth. Makes no sense. But when you're facing the literal end of all reality, perfect sense is a luxury you don't have. At least Raiden tried something, which is more than can be said for what came next in the altered timeline he created. The altered past. Raiden received fragmentary visions from his future self, and he used them to make choices he would not have made otherwise. Here's the thing, he was working with pieces of a shattered message, not a detailed instruction manual. He must win was helpful, sure, but it didn't tell him how Liu Kang would win or what the cost would be. So Raiden improvised, guided warriors differently, intervened in battles, and occasionally made decisions that were harsh as hell. Some people he might have saved in the original timeline, he let die in this one. The altered timeline was supposed to prevent Armageddon. It did not produce a clean, happy world. The original timeline had become narratively incoherent. Too many powerful beings with competing interests. Too many convoluted plot threads stacked up across multiple games. The classical story had written itself into a corner where every threat had to be bigger and more apocalyptic than the last, until the only option left was literal universal destruction. The altered timeline solved this by hitting reset, but Raiden's interventions didn't erase the fundamental problems. They just rearranged them. Raiden became a more ruthless version of himself, willing to make cold calculations about who lived and who died based on fragmentary future knowledge. This wasn't the benevolent thunder god gently guiding Earthrealm's champions. This was a deity operating with incomplete information, making his best guesses, and sometimes getting it catastrophically wrong. Every change cascaded into massive unintended consequences. A warrior saved here created a vulnerability there. An enemy eliminated early meant a different threat emerged later. Outworld still invaded. The Netherrealm still schemed. Warriors still died and were resurrected as corrupted revenants. The altered past was trading one set of problems for a different set. Raiden thought he was preventing apocalypse, and technically, he succeeded at that specific goal. But he created a timeline unstable in different ways, ultimately just as prone to catastrophic failure as the original. The timeline he created would eventually attract Kronika, the Keeper of Time, who decided the entire experiment needed to be shut down and restarted properly, which is, not ideal, but if preventing one apocalypse just sets you up for a different cosmic threat to arrive and try erasing your entire reality, at least you bought yourself a few decades before everything went to hell again. The Rise of the Revenants. Quan Chi resurrected fallen Earthrealm champions as undead servants, and they were horrifying. Glowing eyes, grayish withered skin, scars covering their bodies. But here's where it gets truly devastating. These weren't mindless zombies. Revenants retained their combat skills and consciousness. They knew exactly who they were and what they were being forced to do, but they had zero free will, enslaved to Quan Chi's will without the ability to resist. Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Kitana, Smoke, beloved heroes who had fought for Earthrealm across multiple timelines, turned against their own realm. The corruption created a situation where Earthrealm's greatest defenders became its most dangerous enemies. Because who knows your weaknesses better than your former allies? This is the horror Raiden's altered timeline couldn't escape. The champions still died. The corruption still happened. Death itself became uncertain and destabilizing. A warrior could fall in battle and then return as an enemy. Relationships became traumatized and twisted. Scorpion was bound to serve the sorcerer he despised. Liu Kang's undead self clashed with everything his living version had represented. The Revenants weren't just physically dangerous, they were psychological weapons, fighting corrupted versions of people you loved, people you trained alongside, people who taught you everything you knew. And that's not hyperbole. The Revenants retained the exact same combat techniques and tactical knowledge they possessed in life. Quan Chi didn't just resurrect bodies, he weaponized memories and muscle memory. Every move Liu Kang had perfected over decades of training was now being used against Earthrealm. Every strategy Kung Lao had developed was now deployed in service of Shinnok's invasion. The heroes had become the villains, and there was no easy way to reverse it. But if you think corrupted champions were the worst of Raiden's problems, wait until you hear about the Titaness who'd been watching every single timeline manipulation and decided she'd had enough. Kronika's Hourglass. Kronika is either the most powerful being in Mortal Kombat history or the most incompetent cosmic architect ever conceived, and I can prove it. Before you dismiss this as exaggeration, understand what she actually was. Kronika wasn't an elder god. She preceded them. She was a titan who existed before the realms themselves were formed. She didn't just observe time, she created it. She shaped every timeline using the Hourglass of Time, a cosmic artifact that allowed her to rewrite history and create entirely new timeline branches whenever she felt like it. The Elder Gods answered to universal laws. Kronika wrote those laws. But here's where it gets weird. Despite possessing godlike power over all existence, Kronika had been watching Raiden's timeline alteration the entire time. The constant warfare, the endless resurrections, the accumulated trauma across centuries of conflict, all of it was putting strain on reality itself. The timeline was becoming unstable. Too many warriors had died and been resurrected. The fabric of existence was literally tearing apart from the weight of all these contradictions. Kronika's solution? Reset everything. Rewind time to before Raiden's message and start fresh with her perfect design. except Raiden had just beheaded Shinnok, her own son, and completely disrupted the eternal balance she'd spent eons constructing. Kronika had arranged for her two children, Shinnok and Cetrion, to eternally duel as representations of darkness and light. By killing Shinnok, Raiden broke that balance and essentially told Kronika her cosmic design was meaningless. But the truly insane revelation came when players discovered what the hourglass actually meant. Every single arcade ladder ending from every previous game, the ones players assumed were just fun, non-canon what-if scenarios, were canonically possible in separate timeline branches. The hourglass confirmed that infinite timelines existed, and Kronika had been managing all of them simultaneously for eons. NetherRealm had essentially retconned the entire franchise's narrative structure in a single game, transforming decades of non-canon endings into confirmed alternate realities. And Kronika, despite her cosmic power, couldn't maintain control over this infinite complexity. But if you think one cosmic architect failing to manage infinite timelines is disturbing, wait until you hear about the battle that would literally determine whether any timeline would exist at all. The battle for the dawn of time. Fire. God Liu Kang, transformed by merging with Raiden's soul, fought Kronika across temporal boundaries at the dawn and end of time. And this wasn't hyperbole. They literally battled at the moment reality began and the moment it would end, with existence itself collapsing between those 2 points. The arena wasn't a location. It was the concept of time having a beginning and an ending, and Liu Kang fought across both simultaneously. Kronika's plan was simple and absolutely horrifying. She planned to rewind time to before the Mortal Kombat tournament ever began, erasing billions of lives and all history that came after. Every relationship, every sacrifice, every victory, gone. Not just killed, but erased from having ever existed. The stakes weren't losing a war. The stakes were ceasing to have ever been born. Every person who fought in every tournament across centuries would retroactively never have drawn breath. Their children, their victories, their deaths, their legacies, all of it wiped from the timeline as if it never happened. The only resolution was direct confrontation between the most powerful beings available, and there was zero possibility of compromise. Kronika wouldn't accept anything less than total reality erasure. Liu Kang couldn't allow even a partial reset without losing everything he'd fought to protect. One of them had to win completely, and the other had to die. Negotiation wasn't an option. Retreat wasn't possible. The fight would end when one of them stopped existing. Liu Kang's victory came from channeling divine fire with enough intensity to literally burn Kronika into glass and then shatter her. Not imprison her, not weaken her. Complete annihilation of a titan. When her form crystallized and shattered into fragments, Liu Kang inherited her role as Keeper of Time and gained control of the hourglass that regulated all existence. He didn't just defeat Kronika, he replaced her entirely, assuming the cosmic responsibility of maintaining reality's flow. But if you think inheriting god-tier cosmic authority sounds like a happy ending, the responsibilities that came with controlling the hourglass would immediately become Liu Kang's greatest burden. Fire. God Liu Kang. Liu Kang's merger with Raiden created a deity with cosmic authority approaching that of the Titans themselves. This wasn't a simple power boost. This was a fundamental transformation of his entire existence. Raiden, recognizing he alone could not defeat Kronika, chose to combine his soul and divine power directly with Liu Kang's body and consciousness. The Raiden that existed before ceased to exist as a separate entity. His consciousness merged into Liu Kang's, providing additional memories, perspectives, and power. The result was Fire God Liu Kang, bearing the memories and power of both individuals, but with Liu Kang's will as the dominant personality. As a god, Liu Kang possessed abilities to manipulate time, reshape reality, and guide destiny of all realms. His flaming attacks became manifestations of divine fire that could incinerate titans and reshape existence itself. He took the hourglass in Kronika's crown and began rewriting the timeline entirely, not tweaking details or preventing specific disasters, erasing the chalkboard and starting over with a completely blank canvas. Here's the thing though, Raiden's sacrifice was intentional. He didn't accidentally fall into Liu Kang during the battle. He made a calculated decision that his power combined with Liu Kang's will would create something capable of defeating Kronika and stewarding reality properly. The Thunder God, who had manipulated events throughout the timeline and made questionable decisions, ultimately chose to remove himself from the equation and place his faith in Liu Kang's ability to make better choices. That level of trust, coming from a god who had witnessed multiple apocalypses, wasn't given lightly. Liu Kang immediately used his newfound authority to begin rewriting the timeline entirely with Kitana as his sole companion from the previous era. Everyone else from the old timeline, gone or transformed beyond recognition. Their histories erased, their relationships dissolved, their identities reconstituted according to Liu Kang's design. The weight of that decision, the loneliness of being the only person in all existence who remembered the old timeline in its entirety, was staggering. But here's where it gets complicated. A warrior who spent his life protecting Earthrealm was now accountable for all existence. Every choice he made would echo across billions of lives. Every adjustment to the timeline would create ripples he couldn't fully anticipate. He stood alone at the center of creation, bearing responsibility for all that existed. At least he had absolute power to back up that responsibility, unlike the failures that plagued Shang Tsung's counter reset, which spiraled into multiversal chaos almost immediately. Shang Tsung's counter reset, Liu Kang stood at the peak of creation, wielding the hourglass that controlled all time, ready to forge a perfect new era. And then Shang Tsung showed up to ruin everything. Because of course he did. Before Liu Kang could finish reshaping reality, 3 warriors emerged from Kronika's hourglass: Shang Tsung, Nightwolf, and Fujin, trapped in the void by Kronika herself. She'd locked them away because they refused to join her timeline rewrite. But Shang Tsung carried information that completely destroyed Liu Kang's victory parade. Without Kronika's crown, the hourglass would eventually shatter, and when it shattered, every single realm would collapse into nothing. The crown had been destroyed during the final battle, which meant Liu Kang's new timeline was built on a ticking time bomb. Here's where it gets predictably terrible. Shang Tsung volunteered to travel back through time to retrieve the crown before its destruction, claiming this would stabilize the hourglass and save all reality. Liu Kang, despite being a literal god with cosmic awareness, agreed to let the franchise's most consistent backstabber handle the most important mission in existence. This went exactly as well as you'd expect. Shang Tsung's true motivation was acquiring the crown himself and seizing control of the hourglass to become a Titan. The sorcerer who had spent millennia manipulating souls wasn't suddenly helpful. He was playing the longest con in Mortal Kombat history. During the Aftermath DLC, Shang Tsung systematically betrayed everyone and positioned himself to steal godhood at the exact moment Liu Kang thought he'd won. The villain's ultimate move wasn't fighting the hero directly, but hijacking the hero's victory at the moment of triumph. But here's the kicker. When Liu Kang and Shang Tsung finally clashed over the hourglass, their conflict was so cosmically massive that it created additional timeline branches. One timeline where Liu Kang won, another where Shang Tsung won. Defeating Shang Tsung once wasn't enough, because multiverse mechanics meant that a version of him existed somewhere with Titan-level power. That alternate Shang Tsung, Titan Shang Tsung, became an evil god version operating in a shadow timeline, and he was absolutely not done trying to conquer everything. So Liu Kang saved existence, only to discover that saving existence created a multiverse where evil versions of himself and his enemies now existed as cosmic threats. Great. Add that to the list. But if you think one evil Titan hiding in alternate timelines is the worst threat Liu Kang faced, the next issue makes that look almost manageable. The Erasure of the Titans. Liu Kang fundamentally restructured the role and power of Titan-level beings in his new timeline, and he learned from Kronika's mistakes. But here's the thing, he might be making entirely new ones. Kronika had arranged for her 2 children, Shinnok and Cetrion, to eternally duel as representatives of darkness and light. When Raiden beheaded Shinnok after absorbing his corrupted power, he broke that balance completely. Liu Kang's solution was simple and absolute. In his new timeline, Shinnok was neutralized and stripped of power, reduced from a god to harmless, not imprisoned, not contained, fundamentally depowered at his essential nature. But Shinnok wasn't the only problem. The entire Titan tier represented a structural flaw in how reality functioned. They were powerful enough to reshape existence, but not necessarily wise or benevolent in how they used that power. Kronika had treated all timelines as tools for achieving perfection, showing zero regard for the lives destroyed or histories erased. Liu Kang determined that other Titans needed to be eliminated or fundamentally controlled, so he established himself as the sole Titan equivalent force within his new era. Rather than creating a new hierarchy with multiple competing cosmic powers, Liu Kang decided all Titan-level threats needed to be eliminated or depowered. Cetrion was neutralized. Other potential threats were prevented from having any foothold. The cosmic hierarchy was flattened, with one supreme being wielding ultimate authority instead of multiple competing forces. This created stability in one sense, no rival Titans manipulating events or erasing timelines according to their personal visions. But it also created vulnerability. Liu Kang alone bore responsibility for maintaining the entire cosmic structure. If he failed or was corrupted, there was no rival power to balance him. He had consolidated all authority under himself, which is exactly the kind of absolute power that historically leads to catastrophic problems. And the vulnerability showed up almost immediately. When Titan Havoc and Titan Shang Tsung from alternate timelines breached into Liu Kang's era, they represented a Titan tier of power that hadn't existed within his timeline for quite some time. His decision to erase all rival Titans meant there were no other cosmic-level allies who could assist him when threats from other timelines arrived. He had created a system where he was the single point of failure. But if consolidating all cosmic power under one being sounds risky, wait until you see what Liu Kang actually built with that power. The new era, Liu Kang created a complete reimagining of all realms, inhabitants, and relationships using the full power of the hourglass and crown. This wasn't tinkering with history or adjusting a few events. This was building reality from scratch. Every single soul, every kingdom, every relationship dynamic reconstructed from the ground up, and it's genuinely impressive. Raiden, the Thunder God who'd been manipulating events for eons, became a simple farmer who received lightning powers through a gift from Liu Kang. Kung Lao, who'd always lived in his cousin's shadow, got elevated to champion status alongside him, rather than playing second fiddle. Melina became Kitana's legitimate sister, infected with Tarkit disease, rather than being a Tarkatan clone experiment. Reptile got reimagined entirely, becoming Syzoth, a tragic figure caught between his Zaterran heritage and his desire for acceptance. Sindel ruled Outworld, not through conquest, but in partnership with her daughters, becoming an actually decent parent for once in franchise history. Shao Kahn, the tyrant who dominated countless timelines, no longer ruled at all. He became General Shao, a military commander with ambitions, but no actual empire. Liu Kang deliberately downgraded his own cosmic authority. He could have remained an omnipotent overseer controlling every detail, but instead he positioned himself as God of Fire and Protector of Earthrealm, a powerful being, not a cosmic micromanager. This decision matters because it shows Liu Kang learned something from Kronika's failure. Trying to control everything creates the exact problems you're trying to prevent. By giving people actual free will and agency, he accepted that chaos and conflict would still exist. He just removed the apocalyptic scale catastrophes from the equation. The new era represents creative freedom on a massive scale. Beloved characters getting second chances with completely different lives. Relationships that were toxic or tragic in previous timelines, rewritten as healthy partnerships. Warriors who died young living full lives. Enemies becoming allies, allies becoming strangers, and entire factions getting personality transplants. The fundamental political structures of the realms reconstructed to be less prone to apocalyptic warfare. But here's the thing about building a perfect timeline. Someone always finds the cracks. If you think one carefully constructed reality would be safe from interference, wait until you hear about the multiversal invasion that's about to tear it apart. The multiversal convergence. Liu Kang created the perfect timeline. He prevented the horrors of the past, gave warriors second chances, and built a reality where peace was actually possible. But here's the thing, you can't hide from infinity, and I can prove it. the new era wasn't the only timeline. It was just one of an infinite number of timelines that existed simultaneously across the multiverse. And when you're playing with forces powerful enough to create entire realities, eventually someone in one of those other realities figures out how to break into yours. That someone was Titan Shang Tsung. In the alternate timeline where Shang Tsung defeated Liu Kang and seized control of Kronika's hourglass, he didn't just become a god. He became obsessed with proving his supremacy across all realities. Standing in his corrupted timeline wasn't enough. He needed to conquer every version of existence, which meant finding ways to breach the barriers between timelines and invade Liu Kang's new era. But Shang Tsung wasn't the only threat discovering dimensional travel. Other titans from alternate timelines began finding their own methods to cross into Liu Kang's reality. Titan Havoc developed his own invasion plans. Each of these beings possessed power approaching Liu Kang's own, which meant they couldn't be crushed through brute force. The philosophical horror goes beyond invasion. Warriors from Liu Kang's timeline began meeting alternate versions of themselves, people who looked identical but had lived completely different lives and made completely different choices. Some of these alternates were heroes, others were corrupted monsters, and the warriors had no way to know which version they were facing until weapons were already drawn. The convergence revealed something Liu Kang hadn't fully accounted for. No single timeline can remain isolated if sufficiently powerful entities from other timelines choose to invade it. You can build the most perfect reality imaginable, prevent every tragedy, save every hero, but if a titan from another dimension discovers your existence and decides you're in their way, all that careful construction becomes a battlefield. This created situations where multiple versions of characters existed simultaneously in the same physical space. 2 Scorpions, 3 Raidens, entire armies of Sub-Zeros from timelines where events played out differently. The new era, which was supposed to be Liu Kang's fresh start, became contaminated with timeline variants that brought their own baggage, trauma, and agendas. Some came as allies, others came as conquerors. None of them asked permission, but if you think defending against alternate timeline invaders is bad, wait until you see who Liu Kang trusted to help him maintain order across this multiversal chaos. Geras and the Keeper of Time, through all the resets, every apocalypse, every cosmic rewrite that shattered and rebuilt reality from the ground up, one being witnessed it all. Geras, the immortal construct created by Kronika to serve as her enforcer, is the single thread connecting every timeline that ever was. He was there when Kronika attempted to unmake existence. He was there when fire god Liu Kang burned her into glass. And he's still here now, no longer a slave to obsessive perfection, but a genuine partner in maintaining cosmic order. Here's where it gets interesting. Liu Kang could have erased Geras completely when he seized control of the hourglass. Kronika's creation, built specifically to prevent exactly what Liu Kang was attempting, but Liu Kang didn't. He reconstructed Geras, not as a servant, but as a trusted lieutenant. This wasn't mercy. This was strategy. Liu Kang recognized that managing the entire multiverse alone was the same trap that consumed Kronika, that obsessive micromanagement that eventually led to her downfall. By consciously delegating authority to Geras, Liu Kang created something Kronika never had, a system of checks and balances. The evidence is explicit. Geras appears throughout Mortal Kombat 1 not as Liu Kang's enforcer, but as his counsel. Their dialogues suggest genuine collaboration rather than master-servant dynamics. Geras has preferences, opinions, and desires that Liu Kang respects. He evolved from a construct created for control into a being worthy of ethical consideration, and Liu Kang's recognition of that evolution fundamentally distinguishes his approach from Kronika's totalitarian vision. But here's the critical question: will it work this time? 2 guardians instead of 1 obsessive titan. Shared responsibility preventing future apocalypse. Geras represents continuity across all timelines, the one constant who witnessed everything and learned from every failure. If anyone understands the dangers of cosmic authority and the patterns that lead to catastrophe, it's him. Yet the multiverse is vast, and threats are infinite. Titan Shang Tsung from alternate timelines has already attempted incursions. Titan Havoc seeks total anarchy. Every timeline contains versions of every problem, every villain, every catastrophe that has ever occurred. Liu Kang and Geras can maintain balance within their own timeline, but preventing interdimensional invasions from hostile titans may prove impossible to sustain indefinitely. So the question remains unanswered. Has the cycle finally been broken? Or is this simply the calm before yet another reset? Geras witnessed the fall of the classical timeline. He witnessed Kronika's failure. He witnessed Liu Kang's ascension. Now he stands as guardian alongside Fire God Liu Kang. Two beings attempting what no single entity ever could. Permanent stability across infinite timelines. The optimism is cautious. The stakes are absolute. And Geras, the immortal witness to all resets, knows better than anyone that nothing is permanent when reality itself can be rewritten. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.